Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Everybody good? I'm gonna.
Good, thank you. And
Yeah,
you?
there we go.
Good.
All right.
I know some of the people, sorry, I have a quick question. This is, I know some of the students from my class are having a hard time getting into the meeting right now. They're asking for a PIN,
A pin.
like an access code. Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know, because I don't have a code.
the way I set it up, I don't think you should need one. It should just be click the link and pop in. Let me double check though.
Okay.
Um, so if they check their email where I sent the links, because I send you guys those links every week. Massage section C today. There's the link, and then the access code is 853-691-557. But they should be able to just click the link.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I just sent the message in the group chat as well. Thank you.
Cool. Someone's cat is angry.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, in the chat box here on GoToMeeting, I'm putting in that access code so you can send it to whoever needs it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so we have quite a bit to cover today, so I'm going to jump right on in. I'm going to try my best to cover two separate topics today because I have to get you guys your pathology test, get you guys ready for a pathology test, and then business. So the first thing I want to start with is pathology. So the pathology system conditions, this usually works a lot better when I'm like in person with you guys. But what we're going to start with is with the pathology section. If you guys think back to when you were learning organ systems, right? We would learn the organ system, we go through all that stuff. And then at the end of the section would be all of the pathologies, right? So when we did skeletal system, we talked about bones and joints, yada, yada, yada. And then we wrapped it up by talking about fractures and dislocations and osteoporosis and things like that. When you guys did muscular system, you learned about the muscle cells and how they contract, all the chemistry of a muscle contraction. And then you guys learned about muscle pathologies like muscle atrophy and myasthenia gravis and all that fun stuff. So for the information you will need for the pathology test, you guys will need to go through the book at the end of each of those organ systems and look at the last section, those pathology sections. There are a few pathologies that will be on that test that are not listed in your books. In class, what I normally do is have them all assigned out to you guys. I give everybody about 20 or 30 minutes to research one or two of those conditions, and then we all talk about them and go from there. But it's a little difficult to do that same kind of activity in a web class like this because I don't want us just sitting here dead air for 20 minutes while you guys do research. But what I will tell you, you guys will need to use Google. You guys will need to, you'll have to use Google, use your textbooks, kind of find some answers. Not a lot of those will be mentioned in your book. That's where Google comes in. But there are a few of those disorders that are easy enough for me to explain here through this web chat. Hold on a second. I'm getting emails from students about getting into the meeting. Give me a sec. Let me send this link to somebody real quick. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure everybody can get in who's trying to get in. All right. So let's start with a blast from the past. Who can tell me the name of the condition when we have a break or a rupture in a bone? A break or rupture in a bone.
Fracture.
A fracture. We talked about several different types of fractures. Remember, based on how badly the bone was broken, I want to say we gave 4 names of fractures. Now, understand, you guys, there's a lot more than that. But what were some of the main categories of bone fractures? Who can start us out with one? Give me one type of bone.
A compound fracture?
A compound fracture. What is a compound fracture?
I don't remember.
Okay. All right, so let's start with this one. What is a simple fracture? What is a simple fracture? Alrighty then, so let's start this way. We have 4 main types of fractures. We have simple, compound, comminuted, and avulsion. A simple fracture, so you guys will see here I've got the bone running inside of the limb. So the bone is contained within the arm or within the leg. A simple fracture, the bone is broken, clean in two, but the bone is still contained within the limb. So if you've ever seen someone like with a broken arm and their arm is just kind of hanging like rubber, that is a simple fracture. The skin is still intact. What makes a fracture compound is the damage to the bone is made worse. It is compounded by the fact that the piece of broken bone has broken out through the skin. So this is one where like the arm breaks or the leg breaks and you can see the bone jutting out from the skin. The bone fracture is compounded by the soft tissue injury. So we now not only have a broken bone, but we also have torn skin. Now it's open to infection, right? Because remember what's going on inside the bone, you're making blood. So once the inside of the bone is exposed to the air, it got infected. So now there's an infection in there. We would have to set the bone, we would have to stitch up the wound, put you on antibiotics. So a simple versus a compound fracture. A simple fracture is just a bone break. Usually it's a clean break in two, but the bone is still inside of the body. With a compound fracture, the bone is broken and a piece of the bone is like sticking out into the air where you can see it. Another type of fracture was called a green stick or an incomplete fracture. A green stick fracture is very common in juveniles because their bones are still rather bendy. This is where the bone bends and it breaks a little bit, but it doesn't break all the way. So with a green stick fracture, you're looking at a break that looks something like that. So the bone bent and it only broke a little bit. It's more of like a crack, but this side of the bone is still intact. It's still together. So an incomplete fracture is where the bone cracks. There is a rupture in the bone, but the bone is still in one piece. A comminuted fracture is a fancy name for when we talk about a bone being shattered. So if you've ever heard of someone say, oh, I shattered my hip or I shattered my shoulder joint, a comminuted fracture is where the bone is broken into multiple pieces. Lastly, we have a avulsion fracture. Avulsion fractures happen usually when you pull a muscle. So here we see, I've got the muscle, and the muscle is attached to the bone, right? And it's going to be attached to a little bump on that bone. So what happens with an avulsion fracture? You can be running and get your foot caught in something could snatch your arm. For whatever reason, you pull on the muscle rips off of its bony attachment, and that force shears off a small piece of the bone. So the rest of the bone is still intact. You basically just shaved off one of the little bumps on the bone, but it was the bump that was attached to a muscle that got ripped off of the attachment. It still ruptured the bone, so it is still a bone fracture. So incomplete, simple, compound, comminuted, and avulsion fracture. So there's 5.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So which one is a hairline fracture?
A hairline
Is that
fracture. Okay, so a hairline fracture is a good question. A hairline fracture is a crack in a bone. The difference between a green stick fracture and a hairline fracture is that with a green stick fracture, the bone bent. With a hairline fracture, the bone didn't bend, it just cracked.
Okay.
Green stick fractures are more common in kids because their bones haven't fully ossified yet. They're still not fully bone. Adults generally do not have green stick fractures. If the bone bends a little bit, it just cracks. Like it doesn't really bend all that much. So did that answer your question? I think. Okay, cool. So any kind of bone fracture is going to be contraindicated for massage. There's nothing we can do for a broken bone. You don't want to massage the area. You want to give it, 6 to 8 weeks for all of that stuff to heal before we start massaging the area. Now, it is a local contraindication, so we can still massage the rest of the body. We would just avoid, obviously, the broken bone until, the cast comes off and healing has really set in. Another major condition that we deal with the skeletal system is various types of arthritis. There were 3 main types of arthritis that we talked about. Which type of arthritis is associated with old age? Which type of arthritis is associated with old age? Glad we're
Is it
doing
rheumatoid?
No, osteoarthritis. Osteoarthritis.
Osteo?
Osteoarthritis is associated with old age. It's caused by wear and tear on the joints. Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune condition. This is where your immune system decides that synovial tissue, which covers all of your major joints, synovial tissue is now the enemy, and we start attacking it. The thing with osteoarthritis is once it starts, it only gets worse. The thing with rheumatoid arthritis is because it's an immune disorder, it will flare up and then it goes away. And then it will flare up and then it goes away. So it comes in spells or in phases, right? You have a period where the joints become swollen and inflamed and painful, and then the swelling subsides, and then it comes back. Which type of arthritis did we talk about that was associated with high levels of uric acid in the blood? High levels of uric acid in the blood causes a special type of arthritis. It usually concentrates in the joint of your big toe.
Is that gout?
That is gout. Yes, acute gouty arthritis. And it is exquisitely painful. People who have gout sleep with their foot stuck out from under the sheet because even just the weight of the bed sheet on their foot is excruciatingly painful. Gout is often associated with kidney disease or some other type of issue with the kidneys because normally they filter out the uric acid. So chronic alcoholics often will develop gout, but anyone with kidney disease or kidney cancer, anyone that has impaired kidney function, like let's say you donated a kidney, so you only have one, you're now more susceptible to developing gout if your kidneys can't filter out the uric acid properly. I know on your test there will be a question about certain kinds of postural disorders. So I want to take a moment to talk about those briefly. Please make sure that what I'm about to tell you, make sure this makes its way into your notes. So I'm drawing hips up here. This is a very basic drawing, so forgive me, but these, trust me, they're hips. And then we have 2 femurs and 2 tibia. So the way we see here, we've got these bones in line. This is the way that the skeleton should be aligned with gravity, right? The bones of the legs come down straight. Now, there are 2 variations of this posture that are considered pathological. So there are 2 pathological formations that we could be seeing. Either this joint is brought too close into each other, so the knees bend toward each other, or the knees bend away from each other. And those would look something like this. Can you guys see those? There we go. Now this one is very commonly called bow-leggedness, right? Because of the way the legs bow outwards. Please note that what we are looking at here is a deformation in the joint. If we are talking about another condition, rickets, rickets is a bend in the tibia itself. The bone itself is curved. What we're talking about right now is the joint. The bones are straight. They just don't come together in a joint properly. With rickets, you would be looking at something that looks like this, right? The knees are straight, but the tibia itself, the tibia has a bend in it so that the feet bend towards each other. This is not what we are talking about right now. Bow-leggedness is, the medical name is genu valrum. Genu, G-E-N-U, valrum, V-A-L-R-U-M. This is a Latin name. Genu means knee. The second image here, we see the knees are pulled together. So the knees are too close to each other. This condition is known as genu valgum. Valgum, V-A-L-G-U-M. Now I have a cool trick. I don't know if it's cool or not, but it's a funny trick. I have a funny little trick to remember the difference between these two. So with genu valrum, right, bow-leggedness, the knees are too far apart, which gives you a nice little place to hold your rum, right? Or as we say, rum makes my knees spread apart. Genu valgum, the knees are stuck together like they're stuck together with gum. This condition, the layman's term is knock-kneed. You ever seen a kid who, when they stand there, their legs, their knees kind of stuck together? Their legs are in this weird, awkward angle where the knees are really stuck together. That is knock-kneed. Genu valrum, where the knees are too far apart, that is bow-leggedness. I almost guarantee you will see these 2 conditions on the pathology test, so I just want to make sure that I had at least gone over those with you. Remember, rum makes your knees spread apart. Gum keeps your knees stuck together. That's my trick. You're welcome. Another condition, since we're talking about the skeletal system, that I want to talk to you guys about is a medical condition known as pes planus. Pes, P-E-S. Next word, planus, P-L-A-N-U-S. The first word, this is again Latin, welcome to anatomy. Pes means foot, and planus means resembling a plane, like a flat plane. This is flat-footedness. So when you have a foot, there are supposed to be arches on the sole of that foot, right? There's supposed to be a slight arch between the heel and the ball of the foot. With flat-footedness, there is very little of that arch. So the foot sits much more flatly on the floor. The problem here is those arches are there for a reason. They serve to support the weight of the body by distributing the weight throughout the bones of the tarsals and metatarsals. With flat-footedness, that extra support is taken away, which causes pain in the feet. And remember, guys, when you're talking about posture, it starts in the feet. right? Posture starts on your foundation. So if your feet are not able to support the weight of the body, that will throw off your ankles, that will throw off the knees, that throws off your hips. And then once your hips are off, now the entire upper body has to compensate because the basic foundation of the body is now compromised, right? It's leaning one way or another, or the hips will be twisted in place. Now the spine has to twist, trying to keep your upper body facing forward. Posture always starts in the feet. So when we start to do an assessment of posture, we start by looking at the feet and assessing if they have high arches or low arches or no arches. Pes planus is flat-footedness. I know that I'm moving on pretty quickly, but again, you guys have already covered most of this material, kind of little bits throughout, so I'm just trying to pull it all together. The next conditions that I want to talk to you guys about are muscular system conditions. So the first one that I will mention is going to be muscle atrophy. Atrophy is the degeneration of a muscle due to disuse. If we think back to muscles, remember these guys are very hungry cells. They take a lot of energy, they have a lot of mitochondria to produce insane amounts of ATP. Muscles are expensive to build and to maintain. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of protein, a lot of minerals to keep those things moving. We take a lot of chemicals to go to the muscles so that they can fund their activities. So if we stop using our muscles due to, well, laziness, right? Like we're all in quarantine, so we just lay on the couch, or due to something like paralysis, right? If you break your back and your legs don't work anymore, that's why you're not using your legs. Muscles are expensive metabolically to build and to maintain. So if you don't use them, you will lose them. Your body is not going to divert resources to maintaining big, strong muscles if you're not using them regularly. So atrophy is what happens through disuse, whether through paralysis or just you stop moving, you lazy bum. Atrophy is the wasting away of muscles. The bulk of the muscle will start to degenerate, leaving you with thin, weakened, much smaller muscles. And this process begins very rapidly. Like within a matter of days, your body will begin to break down muscle tissue. This is why dudes who hit the gym all the time, like after a week, they're noticeably smaller after a week because when you're working out, you're fueling your body, giving it what it needs to be super big and strong. I know my little squirt guns are right here, but clearly I'm not a gym rat. But when you are building your muscles and you're exercising regularly and you're eating a lot of protein, you're training your body to build those muscles big and strong. When you stop doing that, only within a matter of days, your body starts breaking those muscles back down. It does not take very long. That was one of my big pet peeves with the movie Kill Bill, that after 4 years in a coma, she was able to talk and she got up and like belly crawled around the floor. All of those muscles would have been atrophied after 4 years. They would have started to atrophy after 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, and she would have gone through years of rehabilitation just to learn to walk and talk again, never mind like driving a car and like kicking butt all over the world. But I digress. If atrophy is the wasting away of a muscle because of disuse, then what our gym rat friends are doing by exercising a lot and eating a lot of protein is building up the size of the muscle. This is a condition known as hypertrophy. Hypertrophy. So the prefix hyper means above or extreme. The prefix a in atrophy means without. So we are either above the size that we are trying to, or that we should be, or we are below or without the size that we should be. Hypertrophy is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Atrophy is the rail thin legs of a person who's been in a wheelchair their whole lives. Once atrophy really sets in, we can't reverse it. When it gets to a certain point, the muscle tissue becomes subsumed with connective tissue. And remember, Connective tissue is not muscle tissue. It does not contract. It does not take commands from the nervous system. It does not stretch and snap back to its original shape. Connective tissue is awesome, but it isn't muscle. So when atrophy reaches its final stages, you can't get that muscle tissue back. It has become connective tissue, and it doesn't do the same thing as muscle does. So let me flip ahead in my book. Trying to find the page here we go. All right, muscle spasms, contractures. What do we call an injury to a muscle that results in a tearing of the muscle tissue? What is the medical name for a torn muscle? Starts with an S.
Strain.
Strain. A muscle strain. How do we categorize muscle strains? How do we rate them?
By grades.
By grade.
Like 1 through 3?
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
Yes. So 1, 2, 3. If you have to have a muscle strain, which one do you want? Which one is the least damaging? A grade 1. You're talking about mild tearing, very minimal. It may hurt, but you still have function. You can still walk on it, and it isn't discolored. Grade 2, you are talking about pretty substantial tearing of the muscle. There will be discoloration. So just understand we're talking about bruising. It is going to be mad bruised. Also, you will lose some function because it hurts to use that muscle. It hurts to put weight on it. So you will tend to avoid putting weight on it. That is a loss of function right there. That's what that is. A grade 3 muscle strain, we are talking about very significant tearing up to 100%. So we are talking about that muscle just ripped. Severe pain, severe discoloration. I have seen athletes who have torn their bicep muscle, and the bruising is halfway down their forearm, and it covers the front part of their shoulder down into the pec. I mean, you tear the bicep, and this whole shoulder down into the forearm becomes bruised. There is also a profound loss of function. Remember, joints move because muscles are attached across that joint. If the muscle is snipped, there is nothing able to contract that joint, which means that joint doesn't move. That is a loss of function. Very good. What is the name of the muscle condition that results from spasms in the sternocleidomastoid muscle, which causes the patient to hold their head in a laterally flexed position? A spasm in the SCM that leaves you in a laterally flexed position.
Torticollis.
Very good. Torticollis. Sounded like David.
Yep.
Good to see you. Torticollis. This can result in clients that spend a great deal of time on the phone without using a headset. So all of us nowadays who are trying to stay in contact with people, holding the phone up against your head can shorten the SCM muscle on that same side. This will lead to muscle spasms, and it leads to torticollis, which holds your head in a flexed position. We like to call this taco neck. There is an old Taco Bell commercial where all of the people eating the Taco Bell tacos had to turn their head right into the taco, and then they were all coming into this, and they were like, "Oh, you've got taco neck." It's torticollis. It's torticollis. Lay off the Taco Bell, kids. All right. Name a muscular condition characterized by pain, fatigue, and stiffness in the muscles associated with stress, poor sleeping habits, and obesity. It is more common in women than in men.
Is it fibromyalgia?
Very good. Fibromyalgia. When we break this name down, fibromyalgia, we've got a lot of different word parts in here. Fiber or fibro refers to a fiber. Let's not overthink some of these things. Fiber, what kind of fiber? The root my or myo means muscle. So we're talking about something related to a muscle fiber. Algia is a painful condition. So we have a painful condition of the muscle fibers. With fibromyalgia clients, their muscles just hurt, and we don't know why. It occurs more often in women than in men. It's associated with poor sleeping habits, high stress, poor diets. People who are overweight or obese tend to be more likely to develop this condition. But we run all kinds of tests, you guys. We do muscle biopsies, we do nerve tests. We can't find anything wrong with them. Their muscles just hurt, and we don't know why. Fibromyalgia is often diagnosed by exclusion, which means we rule out every other thing. We rule out everything that we can test for. And when all of our tests come up negative, then we slap the name fibromyalgia on it. But there isn't a test for it. There isn't, a test that we can run and take blood or anything like that, and so it pops up in the computer. This is fibromyalgia. Every case with fibromyalgia is different. I have worked with clients who, elbows in, dig into their muscles to get some of that tension out. I've had other fibromyalgia clients, I barely rubbed lotion on them. They could not handle any pressure at all. I just sat there and just rubbed lotion on them. Communication is very important with these clients because their pain tolerance will be different from person to person. But there isn't anything we can really do for the condition itself. All we can do is try to relax the muscles, increase circulation, promote relaxation. All right. We're going to move on to nervous system pathologies. I hope you guys are taking notes. Nervous system pathologies. The first one that I want to talk about is multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis. Again, you learn a lot, you guys, by being able to break down medical terms. The trick with a lot of anatomy is not memorizing all of these terms, it is memorizing the word parts, so that when you put terms in front of somebody, they can take an educated guess as to what these terms are going to mean. It's less about memorizing all of these different conditions and more about learning how to speak the language. Medical terminology was designed to make sense to people. It is never meant to trick you or mislead you. If we are naming a condition, we are going to use medical terms that describe the condition that we are naming. With multiple sclerosis, the ending osis indicates a condition. So we're talking about some kind of condition going on with the body. Well, what's going on with this condition? This root scler or sclero refers to scarring or a thickening of the tissue. Multiple tells me it ain't just one, it's happening in multiple places. So with multiple sclerosis, this is another example of an autoimmune disease. The immune system decides, for whatever reason, that the myelin sheath surrounding nerve fibers is now the enemy. When we start attacking the myelin sheath, it causes inflammation along the nerve, which causes pain. It also will interfere with the nerve's ability to conduct signals. If the muscle does not get the full signal to contract, it won't contract fully. It will contract some, but not fully. This is interpreted, we experience this on our level as muscle weakness. So muscle weakness or muscle failure is the result of multiple sclerosis, as is pain, inflammation along the nerve fiber, And what will happen is, as the myelin is destroyed by the immune system, the nerve will heal, but as always, it heals with scar tissue. And scar tissue is not myelin. These are not the same things. So as the scarring becomes worse along the length of a nerve fiber, more and more of that nerve signal is no longer contained within the nerve. It dissipates out into the tissue. If the signal doesn't reach its destination, the muscle doesn't receive the signal, so the muscle does not contract. This leads to muscle failure. So multiple sclerosis, we are looking at a condition where the immune system attacks the nerves, leaving deposits of scar tissue along the nerve fiber. This interferes with the nerve's ability to send signals, leading to muscle weakness, pain, and eventually muscle failure. As an autoimmune disorder, some people have one attack and it goes away and it never comes back. Other people suffer attack after attack after attack, leading to intense pain and utter loss of function. So it just depends. Every case is a little bit different. The next condition we're going to talk about is Parkinson's disease. Can anyone remember or tell me what is the underlying cause of Parkinson's disease? It all boils down to one thing going wrong. What happens with Parkinson's disease? One thing goes wrong that causes a chain reaction.
The lack of dopamine.
Very good. The brain stops producing dopamine, which doesn't sound like a huge deal until we remember, oh, dopamine is like critical for making sure muscles are working properly. Dopamine helps the cerebellum balance the activity of agonists and antagonists. So if your prime movers and your antagonists are no longer coordinated, your body movements are no longer coordinated. You start to suffer issues with balance. You start to have mobility issues. Remember, speaking is a muscular activity, so your speech will become affected until you can barely whisper. Another fun fact about dopamine, it is required in your brain's processes for encoding long-term memory. So if you're not producing dopamine, your ability to form new memories and to recall specific memories can become affected. So with Parkinson's, we are dealing with symptoms like tremors, hoarseness in the voice until you can barely whisper, and memory loss. It is very important that we understand that. Memory loss is associated with Parkinson's disease. The next one I'm going to talk about is ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. This is often called Lou Gehrig's disease. It's a custom in medicine to name a disease after the first diagnosed patient. So you will get the fancy medical name, right? Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. But you also get the name of the disease named after the first patient. In this case, it was a famous baseball player named Lou Gehrig. Now, this was a while ago, so we're talking about famous baseball players like in the era of Babe Ruth. We're talking about like in the early 1920s, 30s, 40s. I don't sports, but somewhere around in the early 1900s. Lou Gehrig was a contemporary of Babe Ruth, but he suddenly started losing control over his pitching arm. And when you're a baseball pitcher, that arm is your entire livelihood. So he went to the doctors. They ran all these tests. They couldn't find anything. All they found was he was losing control of his voluntary muscles. ALS is a neurological degenerative disease. It only affects motor neurons. Sensory neurons are left unaffected, which means you lose control over your body, your voluntary movements. So walking, talking, breakdancing, yoga, eventually breathing. Remember, the diaphragm is a voluntary muscle. Eventually, breathing becomes impaired. You lose bowel control, bladder control. All of these things are under your conscious control. When you lose motor functions, you lose like function, breathing, pooping, peeing on your own, speaking, you start losing all those abilities. But guys, your sensory neurons are not affected, and the workings of your brain are not affected. So there is no memory loss with Lou Gehrig's disease. Your sensory neurons are still working. You are in there, and you are aware of everything going on around you. Touch, taste, hearing, sight, smell, completely unaffected. You are fully aware of what is going on in your environment. You are fully aware of who's around you and who's talking to you and what's going on. You are just locked into your head, and you are unable to do anything. You're unable to respond. There is no memory loss associated with ALS. No memory loss. Good stuff so far? Okay. We're going to move on to talk about spinal cord injuries. Guys, I know we're moving through these rather quickly, but again, you guys have already covered this stuff in class, so. Spinal cord injuries happen when there is damage or trauma to the spine and a piece of the spinal cord becomes bruised or torn or severed. This can lead to various types of paralysis. So when we are looking at different types of paralysis, we name different paralysis types based on the amount of function that was lost. All right, so here I've got different stick figures, and you can see some of their arms and some of their legs are in dotted lines, meaning they lost function in these. So here we have a normal functioning person. They've got control of all four of their limbs. If a spinal cord injury happens somewhere around mid-chest down, you will lose function everywhere below the site of that injury. So if the damage is somewhere around the middle of the spine, you will lose function everywhere below it. If you lose function in the legs, this is known as paraplegia. Paraplegia. You've lost two limbs, and those limbs would be the legs. If the damage to the spinal cord happens a little higher up, let's say somewhere in the neck, well, these nerves control neck, shoulder, and arms. So if there's damage to the spinal cord in the cervical region, you could become quadriplegic. Quad means four. So quadriplegics have lost control of all four of their limbs. If the damage to the spinal cord is unique, and I'll show you what I mean here. Here we have a spinal cord. We've got nerves coming out of the spinal cord. If the cord was damaged like this, notice the oblique angle of that damage. One of these nerves we lose function, but in the other one we maintain function. So one side will be paralyzed, but not the other, right? But everything below this injury we lose. This can lead to a condition known as tetraplegia. Tetra means three. Tetraplegia, they retain the use of one arm, but they lose the other arm and both legs. So they have three paralyzed limbs. The last one is more common after a stroke. So we will recall that different halves of the brain control the opposite side of the body. So if you have a stroke, for example, on the right side of the brain, then you will lose function on the left side of the body. When you lose half of your limbs, it is known as hemiplegia. Hemi means half, like hemisphere. So hemiplegia, you maintain one arm and one leg, but you lose the other arm and the other leg. So these different types of paralyses can be caused by different things, right? Most commonly, it's spinal cord injuries, but we could also see damage caused by diseases like nerve infections. If an infection gets into the spine, meningitis, encephalitis. We could also be looking at something like a stroke. All right, so it was some kind of blood vascular disorder, either a blood clot or an aneurysm that burst, causing brain tissue to die. And when that brain tissue dies, you lose some amount of function. Epilepsy is a common neurological disorder caused by abnormal electrical activity in the brain. So I know you guys have all seen like Limitless or Lucy or one of those movies, and the basic premise is humans only use 10% of our brains, so if we used all of our brain at the same time, we'd be like superheroes, able to like do all kinds of fun stuff. Let me assure you that we do in fact use all of our brain. All of the brain has a function. We don't use it all at once. That would be like using all of the lights on a traffic light all at once. It wouldn't work properly. When we see electrical activity in the brain causing all regions of the brain to light up together, that is a seizure. Very common with epilepsy. The thing with epilepsy is that there is no tissue abnormality. What we mean by that is when you look at the brain, either on brain scans or you do surgery, you open up the head and you look at the brain, everything is normal. We don't see any structural defects. We don't see any chemical changes. We don't see anything physical that would explain these symptoms. But yet this person continues to have seizures. This abnormal electrical activity can cause seizures ranging from some that are so mild you don't even notice them, to others that are so severe the person is thrown onto the floor in these heaving convulsive fits. Epilepsy is very common, and nowadays we treat the symptoms of epilepsy using anti-seizure medications. So if a person has epilepsy and they are taking medication, they usually can go for long periods of time without having seizures. Epilepsy is not contraindicated for massage. It is only if they are actively having a seizure that we want to stop and make sure they're not like falling off the table or something. But epilepsy itself is not a contraindication for massage. All right. As we look at different types of infections that can occur within the nervous system, one of the more devastating ones is polio. Polio is caused by a bacteria or actually, I want to say it's a virus now. Now you've got me thinking. I'm questioning my reality, you guys. Is polio a virus or a bacterium? Let me look. It is a virus. So, poliomyelitis is the condition that occurs once you have been... Thank you, Lois. Thank you, Lois. Good job. It is a virus. Poliomyelitis is the condition that occurs after the brain has been infected with polio. It causes breakdown in the medulla oblongata, which again controls moving, breathing, just the important stuff. So when you are suffering from the symptoms of polio, one of the more devastating effects is that you can lose motor control of your legs. It will lead to different levels of paralysis. You will also start to lose your ability to breathe on your own. So back in the day, they used to have to put people in iron lungs. These are these huge metal cylinders that your entire body would be inserted into. You just have your little head sticking out. And it basically was an artificial respirator. It breathed for you because you had lost respiratory control. There is a reason that we vaccinate against polio. It is very contagious. It is deadly. And even if you recover from the infection, you could still have symptoms of paralysis and difficulty breathing for years and years and years and years. So please Vaccinate your kids, you guys. There is a reason that we vaccinate against these diseases. They are very infectious and very deadly. Encephalitis is another infection that can occur that causes inflammation of the brain itself. This is distinguished from meningitis, which is an infection that causes inflammation of the meninges surrounding the brain. So encephalitis, the brain becomes swollen. With meningitis, the meninges become swollen. Both of these cases put pressure on the brain, and the treatment for them, in addition to antibiotics, is they have to drill a hole in your skull to relieve some of that extra pressure. It's not very pretty, but it's what we got to do. Because if you can't release the pressure off of the brain, it can start to cause significant brain damage. These conditions are caused by viral infections, so they are very, very contagious. If there is an outbreak of meningitis or encephalitis, like on a college campus, they shut it down, they send everybody home, and they disinfect everything. There is a ton of liability that could follow if they didn't shut down a meningitis infection. Another important infectious disease dealing with the nervous system is shingles. Now, shingles, we often think about it as being a skin rash. The skin rash is just one of the outward symptoms. The actual infection is found in one of the spinal nerve roots, one of the roots where the nerves branch off of the spinal cord. Whichever nerve root is infected will develop a painful, watery blister rash along the dermatome innervated by that nerve root. So the rash of shingles is a band that wraps around the torso. It rarely crosses the midline because, remember, one half controls one half, the other half controls the other half. So if your right side is infected, you'll see a band along the right side of the torso. It will not cross the midline unless the left nerve root is also infected. The rash only appears in the dermatome of the affected nerve root. It is more common that you will infect adjacent nerve roots on the same side rather than jumping across the spinal cord and infecting nerve roots on both sides. Last one we're going to talk about for the nervous system is neuritis. Neuritis is the inflammation of a nerve. One of the more common types of neuritis is sciatica. The sciatic nerve has pressure put on it by the piriformis muscle. The nerve becomes irritated, becomes painful. But there are other types of neuritis as well. Some of the more common ones that we deal with are thoracic outlet syndrome, which is where the brachial plexus exits the cervical spine. It has to exit between the anterior and middle scalenes. So when these neck muscles are tight, they squeeze the brachial plexus, which leads to numbness, weakness, and tingling in the affected arm. Another example of neuritis is carpal tunnel syndrome. So with carpal tunnel, the median nerve, only the median nerve, make sure you put that down. It's the median nerve involved with carpal tunnel. Causes compression of the carpal tunnel through the wrist, impinges the median nerve, causing numbness, tingling, and loss of sensation in the palm side of the first 3 fingers only. Now here's why. The median nerve innervates this side in the first 3 fingers of this hand. Remember, in anatomical position, we're standing like this. So the medial side of the hand, this side, and these 2 fingers are innervated by the ulnar nerve. The back of the hand is innervated by the radial nerve. So there are 3 separate nerves that are controlling different aspects of the hand. Only the median nerve passes through the carpal tunnel. So carpal tunnel disorder only affects the median nerve, or it's only caused by the median nerve. The radial and the ulnar nerves are unaffected. There is a simple diagnostic test that we can do on our clients to test for carpal tunnel. You start with the palm of their hand. You want to go distal to the little bracelet wrinkles around the wrist. You want to be right on the beginning of the palm of the hand, right in between these 2 muscular pads, right? So you can kind of pinch your finger in between them. That's the spot you want to be on. Now, take your pointer finger nice and firm and press or poke hard, like poke, 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 right on that palm of your hand. Did that hurt? If you say no, that did not hurt, congratulations, you are negative for carpal tunnel. But if it does elicit pain, positive for carpal tunnel. All right. Moving quickly along, as we move into the endocrine system, there is only a couple of disorders that I really wanted to pull your attention to. One of the most important ones that we understand is diabetes. So diabetes comes in two types. Type 1 diabetes is also called juvenile diabetes. It is often diagnosed in childhood. This is also known as insulin-dependent diabetes. Type 1 diabetics are the ones that have to prick their finger several times a day. They check their blood sugar. They may have to inject themselves with insulin, or they wear an insulin pump that's attached to their body that is constantly providing insulin for them. The root cause of type 1 diabetes, it is an autoimmune disorder. Your immune system decides that the islets of Langerhans in your pancreas are the enemy. Islets of Langerhans are the cells that specifically produce insulin. So when they are under attack, they can't do their job, so you don't produce insulin. This causes wild swings in your blood sugar, so they have to inject themselves with insulin and check their blood sugar regularly. Guys, type 1 diabetes, this is often diagnosed in childhood, right? This is a disease of genetics. Type 2 diabetes is known as adult onset diabetes. They are not insulin dependent, but this is not caused by an autoimmune disorder. This is more likely caused by lifestyle. This is a disease that affects people who have a poor diet, a high carbohydrate diet, high in sugars and refined sugar. It's associated with people who are overweight or obese, and they get very little exercise. Type 2 diabetes can be reversed through lifestyle changes. So through diet and exercise, you lose the weight, you can undo the effects of type 2 diabetes. All the diet and exercise in the world cannot undo type 1 diabetes. Type 1 you are born with and you have it forever. Type 2, you develop it and then you can reverse it through lifestyle change. Both of these conditions are considered endocrine disorders because the pancreas produces the hormone insulin, and insulin is at the root of everything that is going on here. We either are not producing enough, or with type 2, we're producing way too much insulin. So for this reason, it is considered an endocrine disorder. Okay. We did not have any real important disorders for respiratory or digestive or reproductive system. So we've covered almost all of the major important things that I want to make sure that we touched on for pathology. So before we move on to our next topic of this lecture, does anyone have any questions? Anything pathology related that I can explain or touch on before we move on to business? Anybody? Okay. So we are going to move on to chapter 22. We are looking at the business chapter. And the first thing that I would like to start off by talking about is the difference between being an employee, an independent contractor, versus self-employed. And the real crux of what I'm getting at is when it comes to tax time. So if you are an employee, your paycheck is given to you by your employer. They have withheld certain taxes like your FICA and Social Security and all that stuff. So when you get your paycheck, all your taxes are already taken out. All of that paycheck is now yours to spend. But your employer has a lot of control over you. They can impose a uniform. They give you a work schedule. They provide benefits for you or not. Being an employee, you sacrifice a lot of control, but you get the full amount of your paycheck. When you get that paycheck, it is all yours. You are filing with the IRS as an employee by filing a W-2 form. And when you file your taxes, you will file them on the IRS form 1040, 1040, 1040. There we go. 1040. Now, for an independent contractor, subcontractors file their taxes on a form called the 1099, 1099. Independent contractors are not employees. So the employer does not have a lot of control over you. They do not set your schedule. They cannot give you a uniform to wear. You have a lot of control. You set your own schedule. But when they write you a check under a 1099, they don't withhold anything. Whatever amount you earned, that is the check they give you. Now it is your responsibility to withhold your own taxes. So you need to be able to calculate how much are you going to owe from this paycheck and set that money aside. It is very, very important that you do that, because if you don't, when you file your taxes come April 15th, you will have paid no taxes throughout the last year, which means all the taxes that you owe are now due. And I hope you got, $7 grand just laying around somewhere you can pay that tax bill. Normally, for most employees, we figure out how much you're going to owe in taxes. They break it up into however many paychecks you're getting. So if you're on a 26 paycheck cycle per year, they take the amount of taxes you're estimated to owe, they break it up into 26 payments, and they withhold that amount from each paycheck. If we calculated correctly, then when you file taxes, you break even, right? You file your taxes, this is what you owe, this is what I paid, and you get nothing. If you paid too much, you get a refund. If you pay too little, you owe the remainder come tax time. When you are filing a 1099, no one is holding any taxes out of your paycheck. You are getting the full amount handed to you. So it is your responsibility to calculate and withhold your own taxes. We usually pay those taxes quarterly. So you estimate how much you would owe. You make a payment every 3 months to the IRS. Then when you actually file your taxes, you determine whether you overpaid, underpaid, or hit the nail on the head. So if you are self-employed, you still have to file taxes. You file these taxes on a form 1040 EZ. 1040 EZ, 1040 EZ. The 1040EZ form, and I'm so sorry, I screwed that up. It is not a Z, it is an S. I apologize. 1040ES. Sorry about that. The ES stands for estimated. You are estimating how much money do I owe in taxes, and you make the payment for what you guess you owe. Now, you don't just take a wild guess, right? A shot in the dark. They have formulas that you plug in how much money you're earning and what you should be paying, and it will spit out a number to you. You pay your estimated taxes quarterly. So every 3 months, you file and pay with the IRS. Then at the beginning of the year, when you file those taxes, you file your tax returns, that's when you determine what, now that you know how much you actually made that year, right? You're not estimating anymore. I know how much money I made from January to December. Then you go back and calculate how much money should I have paid. And again, you either overpaid and you get a refund, you underpaid, in which case you owe the government more money, or you calculated it exactly. You file your refund or your return and you don't get anything. You don't owe, you don't receive a refund, you paid it perfectly. I know a lot of people love tax return time because they love getting that paycheck, but guys, remember, if you're not calculating your taxes properly and you're overpaying, you're shorting yourself out that much money every month. And you've basically loaned it to the government to hold on to for a year, and you're not getting paid interest on that money. You're just giving an interest-free loan to the government, just hold this money for me for a year and give it back to me in April. Now again, a lot of people look at it as kind of an informal savings account. If I don't see the money, I don't think about it, and then come tax time, I just get a bonus check. And for a lot of people, that works. But if you're into personal finance and you're trying to make your money work for you, you don't give out interest-free loans to people. You should be calculating exactly how much money you should pay in taxes, paying the exact amount, and when you file your returns, you get nothing. You don't owe anything, but you don't get a refund. That way you have gotten all of the money for each paycheck that you should have gotten. So when you get a refund, it's because you overpaid your taxes, and then you don't get interest on that loan. You just gave the government free money to hold on to, and then they give it back to you come tax time. You guys are starting to turn in business projects to me. They are looking amazing. So I'm going to skip over the sections about resumes and cover letters. You guys are doing a fantastic job so far with the business projects that I've seen. All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about are business structures. So when we talk about a business structure, what we are talking about is how is the business set up? Who owns it? Who's responsible for it? Who's paying the taxes on it? That's one of the important things. We generally look at 4 main business structure types, but I want you guys to understand that if you get into like hardcore business world, there are many, many, many different types of business structures that we could talk about. We're really going to focus on the top 4. And those are sole proprietor. This is the one that most massage therapists fall under, right? The vast majority of us are sole proprietors. Partnerships, LLCs, and corporations. Now, I don't know, I'm not sure which teacher went over business with you guys, so I'm not sure how much information you really got about different business structures, but as I said, sole proprietorship is going to be the most common. With a sole proprietorship, you are the business. The business is you. So if I had my own massage practice and I am David Holden LMT, I am the business. The business checking account is my checking account. The business employee, it's me. It's all me. It's just me. So when I file my taxes, I am filing my business taxes under my social security number. There is no legal difference between me and the business. We are one and the same. So if the business takes out a loan or purchases assets like a car or a building, I purchased a car, I purchased a building using my credit, my good name. The debt is mine. If the business folds and goes under, I am still responsible personally for any debts or liabilities that the business incurs. A partnership is similar to a sole proprietorship, except instead of one owner being solely responsible for everything, it's a partnership. This could be 2 or 3 or 50 people that are coming together. They each jointly have a stake in the business. So when they file their taxes together, right? You're as the business, me and Joe Schmo business partner file our taxes together because we are business partners. We are the business. Partnerships, just like marriages, can be risky. You do not jump into a business partnership with someone that you do not really know and really trust, just like you would not run out into the world and just marry somebody that you do not know and do not trust. When you become business partners, you are both equally responsible for the success and for the failures. So if your business partner uses the business name and runs out and buys himself nice cars and expensive vacations, you are on the line for those purchases, just like you were on the line for anything when you were a sole proprietor. Okay? LLCs. LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation. It is a relatively new type of business structure that serves to shield the owner from certain amounts of liability. So basically what I mean is, if you are a sole proprietor and you are running your business and someone gets hurt or you hurt someone and they decide to sue you, since you are the business, as a sole proprietor, your assets are on the line. They can take your house. They can take your car. They can take your retirement fund. They can take your kids' college savings fund. Any asset that you have in your name as the business, it is a business asset. So if you get sued, all of your assets are on the line. Now, as a savvy business owner, we want to protect our assets. I don't want my house to be up for grabs if I ever get sued. So what you need to do is put a veil of protection, a veil that separates the business assets from my personal assets. This is the beauty of corporations. A limited liability corporation, or LLC, basically adds one of these veils of protections. It is an entity. We are basically creating a fake person. This person only exists on paper, right? We are still me, Dave Holden. I'm still a human being calling the shots, making decisions. But my LLC is now this new fictional person that exists on paper. And now this fake person is the business. This person owns the assets, has a checking account, owns the company car, pays the rent every month for my location, right? This fake person that exists on paper is the business. So if you sue the business, you are suing this fake person and any assets that this corporation holds. Me being the owner, my house is not on the line. My retirement savings, college funds, cars, trains, my private jet, my island in the Bahamas that I bought, anything that I own is separate from the business. This protects me in the event that I get sued. It conserves my liability. Now with a corporation, we're dealing with, it's a little more difficult, a little more complicated to get an incorporation. It involves filing a charter with the state. The charter would have to state what the purpose of the business is, yada, yada, yada. It gets more complicated. But a corporation gives you an even thicker veil. It gives you even more protection from liability. So corporations will generally be run by a CEO and a board of directors. This board of directors is going to be elected by the shareholders. And the business is charged with doing its business and conducting its affairs in a way that ensures that those shareholders will get a return on their investment. So the important thing with a corporation is that you're turning a profit. That is what it all comes down to. Now, corporations come in a few different types. We have S corps and C corps. The difference between those two is the way they are taxed. One of the downfalls of corporations is the so-called double taxation. So any money that comes into the corporation is taxed, right? Like income is taxed. So the money goes into the corporation, the government gets a cut off the top, then whatever is left over after you pay all your bills and everything, it goes to the employees, like the CEO, like me, the owner of the corporation. Well, now whatever income I get is taxed. My income taxes are taken out. So then it goes to me. But look at what has just happened. My business, my money, my business, my money, the money coming into my business got taxed on its way in, and then it got taxed again on its way to me. This is the so-called double taxation. Now, if you're making millions and millions of dollars a year, like Microsoft or Apple or McDonald's or Popeye's Chicken, then not that big of a deal. But if you are a smaller business, like say one massage therapist, incorporating yourself does not make sense. You are electing to be doubly taxed. This is not a good business decision when you are running a very small business. For a very small business, like what most of us are going to be involved in, you need more protection than what you get from being a sole proprietor. Usually an LLC is the nice choice. You can file for an LLC in the state of Florida for about, it's just a couple $100. It's like $200 to $400. You file the papers with an attorney, they file it with the state, and it's done. Corporations cost a little bit more money. You're talking about upwards of $1,000 to incorporate yourself. But if you're just a small business, it doesn't make a lot of sense to incorporate. It makes more sense as you get larger. So if you open a spa, and then you open a second location, and then you open a third location, now you might want to start thinking about incorporating so that your personal assets have more protection if something happens to one of your business locations. Is this clear?
I do have a quick question about the LLC.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. In the book, it says most states require the LLC to have at least 2 owners or more.
Yes.
Does Florida require that?
No. Florida allows
Okay.
a single owner LLC, but many states will require at least 2 people. What most people opt for is either a business partner, like another massage therapist. You guys go into business together and you both see clients, or you would get somebody who is very business minded. So you do the massage stuff, they handle the business stuff. And that's how you each, earn your bacon, I guess you'd say, in the business. Like I do all the massages and deal with clients. Somebody else runs the books. They file the paperwork. They pay the taxes. They make sure the business functions are moving forward. The third option is what is called a silent partner. A silent partner, basically, they are a partner. They are responsible, but they don't deal with anything. They give you money. Here's the money you need to run the business. Now I'm going to go over here. You just give me my profit. A silent partner doesn't take an active role in the business. They are a source of funding. They give you money to run the business. You give them a cut of the profits, and they stay out of your business and let you run it the way you want to. Silent partners are a lot more difficult because if I'm putting money in, I want to say in what you're doing, but it is not uncommon. So, good question. A couple of things that we need to keep in mind when it comes to starting a business. First and foremost is startup costs. Starting a business is not cheap. It will cost you some amount of money. Now we are lucky because as far as businesses go, a massage business is very inexpensive to start and maintain. You can start a massage business with little more than a few $100. There are several industries that you cannot start a business without hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in startup costs. So massage therapists are pretty well positioned in the market to be able to start a business cheaply. However, there's a lot of competition. There are a lot of massage therapists out there. So you can start the business very cheaply, but you quickly have to keep investing money into the business in order to keep it going. This goes to things like marketing. This goes to your your tech infrastructure. You need computers, you need internet, you need a website, you need online booking, you need online soap note forms, you need ways of communicating with clients online. You also will have other expenses like advertising, printing, right? You got to print all those brochures. Well, nice professional printers are not cheap. So you got to pay a professional printing company to print your business cards, your flyers, your rack cards, your brochures, any of your marketing materials. You may also have to pay insurances. It is very important that you have the right kinds of insurance. Liability insurance covers things like slip and fall in your business. Somebody slips on the floor and gets hurt. Professional liability insurance is like malpractice insurance. It insures you if you do something in the massage that harms someone, like your massage technique was flawed. You would also have things like you could get insurance on the facility. So if your building catches on fire and you lose your massage table and all your products and your computers, those insurances would replace the supplies and the equipment that you had in the building. You'll also need health insurance because if you get sick, you've got to have insurance to go to the doctor. If your business is out-call based and you're traveling to people's houses, you have got to have car insurance. And you've got to tell your car insurance that you travel for work. You're going to pay higher premiums, but if you get in a car accident on your way to a client and you did not have the work-related insurance, they can refuse to cover the damages from your car accident and you are screwed. It will up your car insurance bill, but if you are using your car for business purposes, you've got to tell the insurance company. They're going to charge you more. You got to pay it. If you don't tell them, they can get out of paying it in the event that you get into a car accident. And then there are other professionals that you may need to pay whatever they charge for their fees. So like an attorney, if you're trying to create an LLC or create a corporation, you need an attorney's help and they don't do it for free. You got to pay the attorney for their expertise. You will need to pay an accountant to handle your books, make sure your taxes are paid, make sure your money is working properly. You need to pay graphic artists to create logos and business materials for you. Web designers, business coaches. If you have never owned a business before, you need a business coach. You need someone who knows what they're doing to give you advice and guidance so that you don't make amateur mistakes in the startup of your business. When you're creating your business, it's important that you select a proper business name as well as you scout out a proper business location. The name of your business makes a difference. It does. So when you're looking at something like Smith's Massage Clinic, ooh, that sounds very professional. It sounds very medical. I feel like I'm going to get a very therapeutic massage at Smith's Massage Clinic. But if you're riding down Dale Mabry and you see something like Smitty's Massage Parlor, I'm not really sure if it's massage going on in there. I think it might be massage, if you know what I mean. Making sure that the name of the business is something that is identifiable. So by reading the name of the business, I know what business it is. I know what I'm getting into, but also that it sounds professional. It sounds legitimate, right? It doesn't sound like some place that I'm going to need a shower after I walk out of there. And the business location is critical, you guys. If I cannot find your business, I'm not going to your business. It needs to be in an area that is easily identifiable. You should be able to see the storefront from the street. It should be easy to find. Make sure you're on Google Maps, you're on Apple Maps. Make sure your business is listed on all those map apps so that people can actually find you. If they can't find your business, they're not going to go to your business. I have seen many people who pick a crappy business location and then wonder why their business fails and why they're not getting business. It's because nobody can freaking find you. Making sure that the building that you're in is in good repair. You know, if I'm walking into a roach infested dump, I'm not getting undressed for a massage. It should be clean. It should be professional looking. You know, the building itself, the facilities should be clean, organized, in good repair. I should not feel like I'm going to catch some kind of parasite by walking into your business location. Bookkeeping systems are important. Now, bookkeeping systems, you can go in a lot of different directions. Most small businesses just use QuickBooks. It's a simple program. It helps you track your income, your expenses, your liabilities, to show you the financial health of your business. QuickBooks is not the only player in town. There are a lot of different systems that you could use. However, the important thing is that you have a bookkeeping system and that you are using it consistently. Bookkeeping is not fun. If someone told you that bookkeeping was fun, they lied to you. It is tedious. It is a lot of numbers. You got to keep a lot of records. But guys, bookkeeping is essential to the health of your business. If you are not keeping records, then you are not doing business. I hate to break it to you guys, but all business is, aside from doing whatever the activity is that you're doing, is keeping good records. That is it. That is business. Keeping records, issuing receipts, keeping copies of those receipts, making notes of every time money changes hands. You got money coming in, you got money going out, you were issued a bill, you paid a bill. That is what business is. It is extensive record keeping, which accounts for every penny that flows through your business. This is why you need an accountant. If you do not have financial experience under your belt, do not try to do this by yourself. Hire someone, at least in the very beginning, to show you the ropes, someone to get you on a routine, right? To show you these are the things you have to do every day, every week, every month. And then when it comes tax time, hire someone to help you with your taxes. After a few years, you get really good at it. You can start, phasing them out and doing it more of yourself. But guys, nothing will crash your business faster than poor bookkeeping and inadequate record maintenance. You've got to be keeping records, you guys. That is the only thing that divides a business from just a person slinging massages. If you are just going to do massage, you get a little cash, and then you spend it as soon as you earn it, you are not in business. You are just earning some cash. A business exists on paper, and a business is only as strong as its bookkeeping practices. True story. In order to properly fund and run the money of your business, you will need a business checking account. This absolutely should not, under any circumstances, be the personal checking account that you are using right now. You need to create an entirely separate account that deals exclusively with the business. It does not have any of your personal money. None of your personal bills are coming out of that account. It needs to be completely separated. When it comes time for paycheck time, as awkward as this can be and as weird as this sounds, you sit down with your business checkbook and you write yourself a check. David Holden writing a check to David Holden for X amount of money. And then you take it to your bank and you deposit it into your personal checking account. This ensures that there is a paper trail, that you are showing the business, which is me, is paying the employee, which is also me. As weird as it is to sit there and write a check to yourself, this is what you have to do, because you got to give yourself a paycheck. You can't just run a business and not take any money out of it, right? The owner of the business still has a paycheck. It's just a paycheck written to him, from him, for whatever the amount is that his paycheck is going to be for. You can't take out your paycheck if it's too much, like if you don't have enough money in the account. Welcome to the beauty of owning a business. If you do not make enough money to pay yourself, You do not get paid. But you got to make sure that there is enough money for you to get paid because you can't do what you're doing for free. Before you take out a paycheck, you need to make sure that any employees that you have, they get their paychecks first. Welcome to the responsibility of owning a business. Employees must be paid before you can draw your owner's draw, before you can take your paycheck out of it. So when you guys sit down with your bills at the end of the month, I'm sure that you do something like figure out how much money I brought in, figure out what all my bills are, and then you determine what's the remainder, right? Did I end up with extra money after the bills were paid, or did I end up with no money after the bills were paid? Or I didn't pay all my bills, I still owe some money. Businesses have to do the same kind of thing, except it's much more formal. It's done on a special form. It is called a profit and loss statement, or a P&L statement. Profit and loss statements list all the money that came into the business. They list all of the expenses or liabilities or payments that the business made, all the money going out. And at the bottom, it sums everything together. So it shows at the end of this month, did the business have a profit, or did we have a loss? Or did we break even? Now, the goal of every business is to break even. It's amazing if you can profit, but you cannot function if you are not breaking even. If you are losing money every month, you're going to go out of business. So profit and loss or income statements break down the money coming in, the money going out, and whether those amounts broke even, and if not, did you profit or did you lose? Profit and loss statements are required for businesses to publish if you are a publicly traded business. This is why you can go see what Coca-Cola made last year. You can see what Apple made last year. Those big public corporations that are traded on the stock markets, their profit and loss statements are required to be published publicly every year. So you can go back through the decades and see how Coca-Cola made or lost money throughout the decades. If you're not really into finances or really into big businesses, it's super boring, you guys. It's just a spreadsheet. It's just numbers on a page. But if you're really into this kind of stuff, you can learn a lot about a business by looking at where they're spending their money. If you're really into that kind of thing, it can be fascinating. It's nerdy, but it's fascinating. Accounts payable and accounts receivable. Remember, we were talking about the business. So accounts payable are all of the things that the business has to pay. You got to pay your rent. You got to pay your insurance payments. You got to buy equipment. You got to pay your vendors for the product. Accounts payable is anything that the business has to pay. Accounts receivable is any money that the business receives. So as you do services, if you send invoices or you bill your clients, that is accounts payable. I'm sorry, that is accounts receivable. That is money that you're going to receive from the clients for the service that you did. Usually, massage therapists don't invoice. Invoice is like sending them a bill and they pay it over time. Usually, for us, payment for the service is due at the time of service. They don't leave your building without having paid you for the massage that you just gave them. So your accounts receivable department is usually going to be very small, and it's dealt with one client at a time. But if you're doing something like charity work, let's say you're donating something or you're selling packages, that would kind of be dealt with by your accounts receivable department. And if you're a sole proprietorship, congratulations, you are the accounts receivable department and the manager and the janitor and the marketing person. If you're a sole proprietor, you do all of it. Welcome to the world.
I do have a question kind of about that.
Yeah.
Like in the book, it did say like if you wanted to volunteer your services, do you have, I mean, after we get licensed or whatever, do we have to have like a business itself to volunteer, or how does that work? Like if we want to donate an hour massage to some type of group record, you know.
If you are donating it or you're giving it away for free, that's not a business function. You don't need a business license. You don't need anything if you're doing it for free. But if you are charging for it,
Okay.
that's what's going on.
No.
So if you're donating a 1-hour massage, that's all there is to it. You sign a gift certificate or something like that. That's the end of it. But if you're opening an establishment where you're going to have clients coming to you for massages, then you need an establishment license and all that fun stuff.
Okay, so let's say like I donate an hour or something, I can do that as a tax write-off too, right?
Yeah.
Because I donated it?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's what I
whatever the
want.
dollar value of that massage would be, that is the amount that you write off on your taxes. Now, let me explain something else to you guys before we move on to something else, because this is important. A lot of people misunderstand something. How much time do I have? I got a little bit of time. I'm going to try to move through this really quickly, you guys. I'm going to make up a bunch of numbers. So the numbers are not accurate. It's just the concept that I'm trying to make sure you guys understand. There is a lot of confusion from normal people when they talk about filing taxes and what tax bracket they go into. And when we start talking about writing something off on your taxes, the idea is, oh, well, if I write it off on my taxes, I get it back on my tax return. No, that is not at all how this works. Our tax system is called a progressive tax system. You do not pay one flat percentage. You pay percentages on a progressive basis. Now, again, the numbers I'm going to give you are not correct. You can go to the IRS website. They'll give you the correct numbers. I'm just giving you the idea of how this works. I'm going to use nice, clean, round numbers. Okay. So when we were talking about a progressive tax system, I've heard many, many people say, oh, I don't want to take a raise because that'll put me in the next tax bracket and I'll lose all the money from the raise by having to pay more taxes. You will never lose the amount of your raise in taxes. That is not how a progressive tax system works. I'm going to show you guys the incorrect way of doing taxes. We'll figure out how much we would owe. Then I'll show you guys the correct way of calculating your taxes and show you this way saves you money. So for this scenario, we have made a clean $100,000 a year. Nice, clean, round number. I brought home $100,000 a year. Now how much do I owe in taxes? Well, with a progressive system, you have separate tax brackets. So the amount of your tax bracket, the amount of money that you make determines what bracket you're in, and each bracket is charged a different amount. Let me bring this a little closer so you guys, just make sure you guys can see. There we go. Everybody can read this? Okay. So if you earn $10,000, you pay 10%. If you earn $20,000, you pay 15%. Now I made $100,000. This is more than 75,000, so this is the bracket that I am in. It is 25%. So you would look at this and we would say 25% of 100,000 is 25,000. That's what I pay in taxes. This is not correct. This is not correct. You do not jump straight to your tax bracket. You pay the amount that you earned in each bracket. So your first $10,000, you paid 10%. 10% of $10,000 is $1,000. 20 to 50,000, that's going to be $30,000 that you made in this bracket. You paid 15%. So 15% of 30,000, this is why you got to have a calculator with you. 4,500. 50 to 75, that's $25,000 that you pay 20% of. That's $5,000. And then the remaining $25,000, you pay 25%. 25,000 times 25% is 6,250. So 6,250 plus 5,000 plus 4,500. This gives us a total that we owe $16,750. This is substantially less than the $25,000 we thought we owed when we just looked, oh, I'm in the top bracket, it's 25%, I just pay 25%. No, this is not how a progressive tax system works. If you are in the highest tax bracket, you only pay that rate on the amount of money that you earn within that tax bracket. So your first $10,000, you're only taxed at 10%. The next bracket that you go into, you are then taxed at that rate. It is progressive, right? You are taxed at a different rate based on which bucket your money is falling into. When you get to the top tax bracket, only the amount of money that you pay, that you earn in this bracket is subject to that tax rate, okay? So let me give you another example. Let's cut all this money out and say now I earn $21,000 a year, okay? Anything less than $20,000 is taxed at 10%. So how much do I pay of this? Only taxable is $20,000. At 10%, that's $2,000. Now, the remaining $1,000 that is now taxed in this bracket is taxed at 15%. And let me do some math real quick. 1,000 times 15% is $150. So that leaves you with $2,150. This is what you owe, $2,150 out of the $2,100 that you earned. You paid 10% on the first bracket. You only pay 15% on the money that falls into that bracket. Is that clear to everybody? You will never take home less money if you get a raise because you moved into a different tax bracket. That is not how the system works. So do not turn down a raise for fear that you're going to move into a different tax bracket. Okay? Good stuff, everybody? Good stuff? A lot of people misunderstand this. You guys would be shocked at how many people turn down raises because they think that moving from this tax bracket into this tax bracket is going to suddenly start charging them astronomical tax rates, right? The highest tax bracket right now, I want to say, it's like 42% or something like that. The government is not going to tax 42% of your check. That is not how it works. They only tax the 42% of the amount of money that you earn above a level. You only pay the tax rate on the money you earn within that bracket. This is the progressive tax system. This is how it works. Okay. Does anyone have any questions over what we've gone over so far? Anybody? Lois asked me, business expense versus petty cash. What are the differences? Okay, good question. So, a business expense is money that I have to spend in order to stay in business. So if you are saying something like, I'm renting a studio. Well, I have to pay rent every month. Rent is a business expense. I have to buy lotion, and I need to buy sheets, and I need to buy business cards. I have to pay for my website domain name, right? davidholdenlnt.com. I got to pay for that. I got to pay for insurance. I need to pay marketing fees I pay to be in a business association, like all of the things that you're paying for, those are business expenses. It is the cost of doing business. Now, the IRS definitions are very loose. You can call a lot of things business expenses and get away with it, and it's perfectly fine. Petty cash, on the other hand, is a little bit different. Petty cash is going to be the actual cash on hand that is in the business. I don't mean like in your bank account. I mean the actual dollars and cents that you have under your roof. Think about petty cash as the cash that's in the register drawer, right? So if I suddenly like, oh crap, something happened, I got to run to the store and buy like a receipt printer. Like my receipt printer exploded and
Toilet paper.
toilet paper. I am out of toilet paper. I gotta have toilet paper. Do I need to run to the bank first? No. As a business, I look at my cash register. I've got a lot of cash in that cash register. That's your petty cash. So then I grab 20 bucks out of the drawer, I run to the store, and I come back. The receipt that I get from the store for that toilet paper, that receipt then goes into the register. That is your petty cash, right? Usually you want to have a couple of hundred, like 200 to 400 bucks on hand, just for incidental. So you got cash on hand if you need to pay for something. But petty cash is the actual cash. That's the actual money you have on hand. We're not talking about money in your checking account. We're not talking about the value of your company car. I'm talking about the actual dollar bills you have in the building. Business expenses are the things that you have to spend money on regularly in order to stay in business. This could be the bills that your business incurs, like rent and insurance bills. This could be incidentals, like my uniform shirt got torn, so now I have to go buy a new uniform shirt. I don't normally have to buy them, but something came up and now I need to buy one. You could decide you want a fancy neon open sign. That's a business expense, right? You bought it for the business. It's an expense. One of my good friends is an accountant, and I want to pick his brain about certain accounting practices. So I take him out to lunch. And while we're eating lunch, I'm asking him all these questions. The receipt for that meal, right? You pay for the whole bill, the tip included, everything. The receipt for that bill, that is a business expense. It was a business lunch. It is a business meal if you discuss business. The IRS, again, is very loose on these things. All you need to be able to do is justify. This was a business meal because we discussed marketing or we discussed bookkeeping or whatever. You can literally write yourself a little note on the receipt itself. The IRS does not require physical receipts. You can scan it onto your computer with your little note written on it, save it as a file. When you go to your accountant to file your taxes, you can hand them a thumb drive. Nothing but photos of receipts. That is perfectly fine. The IRS will accept it. You just need to be able to justify what you are calling a business expense. The IRS definition says that it needs to be reasonable and typical for your industry. So that is a very broad definition. They give you pretty good leeway. Now, as a massage therapist, there are certain things that are crossing the line, but you could still, any office supplies, any kind of insurance payment that you're required to do, you get quite an amount of leeway as to what counts as a business expense. Whereas, again, petty cash is the actual cash you have on hand for your business. So I hope that answered your question. We lost you. Uh-oh. I think I'm losing you guys too. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Uh-oh, hello. Hello, we're back. Sorry
Okay.
about that. This internet connection is spotty sometimes. I lose connections every time I do one of these classes, at least once. Did you guys get all of that explanation about business expenses versus petty cash? I don't know where I got cut out.
I think we got most of it. Like, we got the gist of it.
Okay. So yeah, business expenses are the things that your business has to spend money on, whereas petty cash is actual cash that you keep on hand for incidentals. That's going to be like the money in your register drawer. But business expenses could be rent, it could be consulting fees, it could be car insurance, it could be the money you spend on business cards. Yeah. All right. So we are almost out of time for the day. We covered a lot of material. I know the pathology stuff is mostly a review, but do you guys have any questions at all about anything we have covered today? Anything I can answer for you guys before we break for the afternoon? Lunch with the accountant friend. So what I was saying is the IRS counts a business expense as anything that is necessary for the business and that it is what's the word that they use? It is reasonable. Anything that is reasonable. So if I went to lunch with my accountant friend and we're talking about how I can do accounting on my own, on my small business or whatever, that's business related conversation. So what I would do is I would pick up the check for that lunch, and that receipt for the meal, that's your business expense. You write a note like we discussed accounting strategies or whatever on the receipt so that I know why this was a business expense. And then you just use that expense when you file your taxes. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to explain to you guys. When we talk about writing things off, when things are tax deductible, the important thing that a lot of people miss, you do not get that money back on your taxes. You deduct that money from your income first. So what I mean is, when we did our example earlier, right, I had made $100,000. That was the taxable amount, and I figured out my taxes based on my earnings of $100,000. Well, when you keep all of your receipts for the things that you're writing off, or all of these things that are deductible, let's say I got $20,000, right? I added up my receipts for the year. It's $20,000 of meals and things I had to pay for to keep my business going. That brings my income down to 80,000. That is what I pay taxes on, not the 100,000 that I earned. I deducted the business expenses from my income, which leaves me with my my net income. This is what I'm left with. This is what I really earned. That is what you calculate your taxes on. So when you talk about business expenses or you talk about something being tax deductible, it does not mean you get the money back. What it means is that amount is subtracted from your income, and then whatever is left over, this is the amount of money that you pay taxes on. So you don't get that money back from the government, but what it does do is it lowers your tax liability. You pay less taxes because your net income is less. It is less the amount that you deducted. So when we talk about any kind of tax deductible or charity donation, like if I donated a massage, what is the dollar value of that massage per hour? If you donate a 1-hour massage and you charge $60, $60 is added to the amount that you're deducting. Now, $60 doesn't make a big difference once, but if you donate massages regularly or you make large charitable donations, All of that stuff, that's what you keep. All of your business expenses, every business lunch with a consultant, every rent payment, the amount of money that you paid for your continuing education. Yes, your CEUs are tax deductible. They are required for your license, right? How much money does it cost to renew your license every 2 years? $105. That is a write-off because it is required to maintain your license. Anything that is required to keep your business going goes in your deduction column. So you take all the money that you earn minus all the money that you were required to spend on the business. You are left with the difference. This is what you pay taxes on. That is how tax deductions work. And now, if you're really, really good at playing this game, and I mean really good at playing this game, you keep all your receipts, you've got justifications for everything, there is nothing stopping you. Legally, there is nothing stopping you. If you have the receipts and you can justify it for real, you could deduct everything that you earned. Now, this is suspicious because how are you living your life? How are you paying your bills with no income? But some businesses do this, especially in the beginning when you've put a lot of money up front, but you're not earning a lot of money because the business is still new. You just spent a lot of money getting the business started. So a lot of brand new businesses will have a tax something that looks kind of like this. I earned 5,000, but I spent 100,000. That leaves you 95,000 in the negative. This is called declaring a loss. You lost $95,000 this year. You're not taxed on this. You take this loss and you carry it forward year over year over year. So next year, if I make a little bit of money, it just comes out of this money that I lost. This is how a lot of businesses are able to be million-dollar businesses that aren't really making a lot of money in the beginning. This is one of the tricks that Donald Trump used for his businesses. You report a substantial loss. He reported like 900 million in losses, and then you carry those losses forward, so you don't pay any income taxes. It comes out of your loss, and you carry that loss forward until all that money is used up. Does that make sense? Cool. Awesome. Now, I would caution you guys, do not try to jump into this by yourself. Go to lunch with an accountant friend, buy them lunch and pick their brain and figure out, or hire help. Just hire somebody to do this for you. Have them show you what they're doing so that eventually you got your system in place and you can take over yourself. But if you screw this up, you could owe the government insane amounts of money. So if you just have thousands of dollars laying around, you can afford to make a mistake. But most people cannot afford to make a mistake when it comes to the IRS. I highly encourage you guys to get professional tax advice, professional help when it comes to doing this stuff. I just want to make sure that you guys are armed with the general knowledge of how this works so you don't run yourself into the ground by doing things wrong, like paying $25,000 because you think you're being taxed at a specific tax rate. It's not a flat tax, it's progressive. A lot of people misunderstand that and misunderstand how tax deductions work. So, all right, well, we are out of time. If you guys have any further questions or you come up with anything, please reach out to me. I'm here to help. You guys have my contact info. You are not bothering me when you reach out to me. It gives me something to do. Reach out to me. I'll answer any questions you guys have. And until then, you guys, wash your hands, be safe, and I will see you guys next week.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Bye.
I'll see you guys later.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.